Order, order. Mr Tamanjeet Singh Desi to move the motion.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure, Mr Davies, to serve under your chairmanship, and I beg to move that this House has considered apprenticeships in small and medium-sized enterprises. Apprenticeships, Mr Davies, should be the perfect vehicle for meeting the challenges of social mobility, bridging the skills gap, and raising productivity. With the most recent Office for National Statistics data showing that productivity is 30% higher in France and 35% higher in Germany, our widening productivity gap cannot be ignored if we are to compete successfully and obtain the supposedly easy post-Brexit trade deals promised by this government. Having run my own small start-up construction business within Scotland, I know full well the importance of an SME investing in its people. Those who fail to do so stagnate and indeed start to go backwards. Employer spending on training in the UK has fallen and was low compared to other advanced economies, so there was a clear need to take action to move more employers towards greater investment in the skills of their workforce. As employer spending on training had fallen and was low compared to many of our competitors, it was also vital to improve the level of progression in apprenticeships. For example, only 4% of our 25-year-olds hold a level 4 or 5 technical qualification as their highest qualification, compared with 20% in Germany. In Germany, indeed, apprenticeships, Mr Davies, are taken up by many more young people and are viewed as a high-status option for school leavers. Sadly, the government's rushed implementation of the apprenticeship levy has resulted not in an increase in apprenticeships and opportunities for the most disadvantaged, as was hoped and very much needed, but the exact opposite. This is devastating, especially considering the huge impact apprenticeships can have on young people's lives. Just last week, I met with brilliant apprentices working in my Slough constituency, and I know that their input is hugely appreciated by the many businesses within Slough, and Slough itself is a huge business hub with the largest singly owned trading estate in the whole of Europe. And indeed, Mr Davies, it has more corporate headquarters than the whole of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland put together. So within Slough, we know a fair bit about businesses and about the importance of apprenticeships. Unfortunately, far from turbocharging and helping our businesses further, the levy has left many of them hobbled, unable to fill vacancies, address their skill shortages, or meet opportunities for expansion. From the introduction of the levy, starting with the starts in large employers, those with employees of 250 or more, that has fallen by 9%. But the impact on small and medium-sized enterprises has been disastrous. Apprenticeship starts have fallen by 34% for small-sized businesses and 42% for medium-sized enterprises. Even in my own constituency, despite the excellent Slough Academy, which supports growth in high-demand areas like social care and planning in the council, overall apprenticeship starts in the constituency have not even reached the pre-2017-18 levels, a trend which is indeed across the whole of our country. Current estimates are that there are between 30,000 and 40,000 SME apprenticeship vacancies which remain unfilled, and there could be a loss of 75,000 apprenticeships in SMEs by the end of this year. 75,000 people who will be denied the opportunity to work, to train, and to gain the confidence that comes with successfully completing qualifications. Mr Davies, the failure of the levy for SMEs is compounded because these disappeared apprenticeships were most likely to have been taken up by young people starting with a lot lower qualifications. The very group we might imagine a revamped apprenticeship scheme should help the most. And the latest government data on apprenticeship statistics shows that the number of level 2 apprenticeships has fallen from 63% in 2011-12 to a mere 36% in 2018-19. And indeed, the number of people aged under 19 on apprenticeships has fallen to a mere 25%. in the context of an apprenticeship system where we have the lowest annual level of participation since 2010-11, with 72,400 fewer people participating in 2018-19 than in 2017-18, these figures further underline the inadequacies of the government's implementation of the levy. And the largest falls, Mr Davies, are in the northwest and in the northeast, areas in desperate need of job opportunities and economic growth. So what is, in fact, behind the decline? Under the levy in England, employers are required to pay 0.5% of their payroll above £3 million per year into what is called a ring-fenced digital account to be spent on apprenticeships. This is topped up by a further 10% public contribution. If levy funds are not used within 2 years, they expire. So the system was based on an expectation that many employers would not spend all of their levy funds. These unspent funds were intended to cover most of the costs of apprenticeships for the SMEs who do not pay the levy. At the time, the government estimated around 50% would remain unspent and so available for non-levy payers. Some might say predictably, some levy payers found ways to increase their spending. Indeed, the Sutton Trust warned in November 2017 that an estimated 2/3 of businesses' apprenticeship schemes were merely converting existing employees and certifying existing skills, and that the levy may encourage more of these so-called conversions and rebadgings as a way for large employers to reclaim their money. This indeed looks to be what has happened. A recent Ofsted report on employees on an Institute of Leadership and Management course stated, and I quote, "Most apprentices and their line managers do not know they are on an apprenticeship. Too many apprentices do not develop the knowledge, skills and behaviours needed to progress in their careers. Most apprentices do not develop substantial new knowledge and skills or build on what they already know. They just complete their management qualification." And I think that is a testament to what has actually gone wrong. This and other cases led Ofsted Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman to declare, "We have seen examples where existing graduate schemes are, in essence, being rebadged as apprenticeships. This might meet the rules of the levy policy, but it falls well short of its spirit." And that's why, Mr Davies, last year, the National Audit Office also expressed its concerns that the use of the levy for new high-level apprenticeships was really, and I quote, "public money being used to pay for training that already existed in other forms." Even, Mr Davies, where higher-level qualifications are appropriate and well-designed, they are expensive, and so the money the government expected to be available for SMEs to fund apprenticeships is simply not there, to the tune of around £1 billion, according to best estimates. With the introduction of the levy came the development of new apprenticeship standards to replace the existing frameworks. Now, these have been designed by employer groups and are intended to be more robustly able to establish the skills and competencies an apprentice is expected to achieve. However, Mr Davies, the cost of implementation has once again been underestimated by the government, and this has simply added to the financial pressures faced by SMEs in funding their apprenticeships. This has prompted calls for a proper review of what is and is not an apprenticeship, and how the different kinds of in-work training are best targeted and delivered. From the reports of Ofsted, the National Audit Office and others, this review, I would surmise, is certainly required, and many stakeholders are making the case for a more flexible approach, a skills levy that allows employers to invest in other forms of high-quality training, for example. Such an approach, Mr Davies, would need extra funding, either from the widening of the levy to more employers, or raising contribution rates, or from government itself. However, the burning issue is that there is a crisis in apprenticeships for SMEs, and one that is depriving those in most need of either a solid start to their working life or a helping hand to get up and out. As I said earlier, Mr. Davies, the disadvantaged people of all ages are disproportionately clustered at the lower levels of apprenticeships. They are significantly more likely to be studying at level 2 or level 3 apprenticeships than in higher or degree level apprenticeships. However, not only has the levy led to a dramatic fall in level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships provision, but at the same time, people from deprived communities are being squeezed out of higher level apprenticeships. In 2015-16, before the introduction of the levy, the most deprived 20% of the population accounted for 21.9% of apprenticeship starts at level 4 or higher. But by 2018-19, this figure had dropped to a mere 16.4%. And that's why the Social Mobility Commission has warned that a two-tier system based on apprentices' backgrounds may indeed be emerging. And Mr. Davies, almost 1 in 5 young people do not achieve 5 GCSEs with grades 4 to 9. That's A star to C in old money, or the equivalent in alternative qualifications. They will therefore naturally face greater challenges moving from level 1 to level 2, yet maths and English provision in apprenticeships, i.e. functional skills, they are funded at only half the rate for any other learner. So I would say that employers want to be able to deliver and provide these young people with the opportunity to succeed. But the current funding arrangement makes this extremely difficult. This funding deficit, I would say that the Minister should be answering to it, and that funding deficit must be met. The government needs to acknowledge the extra challenges these young people face and the extra provision needed from their employers and training providers by increasing financial support for apprenticeships, level 1 and 2 apprenticeships. Now, if we truly wish to close the skills gap and raise the floor of our nation's skills, then we must go further. There have been calls, Mr. Davies, from all sides to increase the flexibility of the levy in order to stimulate more high-quality and accessible apprenticeships. One such change would be allowing employers to spend a portion of their levy funds on pre-apprenticeship programs and other initiatives, such as outreach programs, with the aim of widening access to apprenticeships by underrepresented groups. Further, the entitlement to attain a level 3 skill level should be as accessible through the apprenticeship system as it is for young people taking up college courses. And, Mr. Davies, the Trades Union Congress has suggested introducing a new right to progress for apprentices who have completed a level 2 apprenticeship, which would entitle them to progress to achieve a level 3 apprenticeship and trigger the necessary funding. And the lack of proper funding for some of these apprenticeships is, as I said before, having a disastrous effect on entire sectors of our economy. For example, the care sector, Mr. Davies, where many care homes are SMEs. The sector is typically low margin and low wage, and they rely on apprenticeships for the development of new and existing staff. The funding for adult care worker level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships is simply not enough to provide a quality apprenticeship program and is leading to an over-reliance on untrained staff and forcing some providers out of business altogether. Now, the service I'm led to believe, is now trialling an online system of apprenticeship reserve funding for SMEs each month. This has been likened, Mr. Davies, to trying to buy a ticket for a concert, sitting at a computer, hitting refresh, and hoping that this time you actually get lucky. Now, that's no way to be running a program. And on top of this, Mr. Davies, the name of the apprentice is required before the funding can actually be reserved. So therefore, if the employer wants to hire an apprentice, they must do so, or at least make an offer before funding has even been secured. Now, this makes it that actually makes it easier to grant apprenticeships to existing employees instead of hiring in, which is what we should be looking to do. Another barrier to those seeking their fresh start. Mr. Davies, the unanimous voice of SMEs is that the levy, as currently constituted, is failing, and that's to put it mildly. It is failing them, it is failing their current employees and their future employees. And it is failing tens of thousands of exactly those people who most need help, and by extension, the communities within which they live. So my request to the Minister is that the government must listen to that broad coalition of voices, including Labour, businesses and training providers, calling for a guarantee of government funding for SME apprenticeships, independent of the levy, by providing a funded pot for SMEs. And I'm very much looking forward to the Shadow Minister to explain further some of the excellent work that she and her team have undertaken in this respect. But what we need is not just that work, but we need government to now step up to the plate. Its level needs to be guaranteed in order to give certainty to SMEs and to training providers alike, so that both parties can provide the apprenticeships that are needed, and at the same time allow effective planning for the future. Mr. Davies, in conclusion, education can provide equality of opportunity for everyone at every stage of their life, if there is an accessible progression pathway for everyone. It is vital that the opportunity presented by the reform of apprenticeships is used to create such a pathway. The current system prevents young people starting their career journey by failing to provide the appropriate level of support they need. And the lack of such support is denying SMEs the opportunities to recruit the apprenticeships they require to help address the productivity gap. And Apprenticeship Week, which has just ended, and I hope the Minister has used it to listen carefully to those involved in the sector who have been lobbying, the likes of myself and my honourable friend, the Shadow Minister as well, and they will take on board their advice to improve the system the government has created. In this post-Brexit world, Mr. Davies, our country cannot afford to get this wrong. Thank you.